Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Urban Management after a brief break for Eid, and for those of you celebrating the holidays, I wish you all a happy Eid. Mohon maaf lahir dan batin for anything. For any words that have been misspoken or any actions perhaps that are any actions or any actions that I or any of my perhaps my behavior that is unfavorable. Hang on. So I hope you all had an enjoyable break, and it's good to see most of you here today. Perhaps some of you can't make it to this session because you're still traveling or perhaps any other reasons. So today we will listen to a presentation and we will discuss urban heritage management. And I think we're supposed to have revitalization as well. I'd like to remind you that we do have how many weeks left before we go to the peer review workshop. Okay, we have today's week 13, next week is week 14, and then on week 15 we will have the peer review workshop. And I'd like to remind you that you will need to submit your draft. You will need to submit your draft to the final draft review section in Classroom. So far we have one submission out of a total of 11. So we have let me just switch this. Switch the screen to this one at the moment. So the submission deadline for the final draft review is on Friday, the 20th of May, 7 p.m. I didn't set the submission deadline to 11 p.m. because I need to assign a submission to all to everyone for the peer review process to take place. So and it might take me some time to do so. So therefore, 20th of May, 7 p.m. is the deadline for the final draft review. Right. So other than that, I don't think I have any other information to share at the moment. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can continue. We can proceed with the class presentation and discussion. Okay, so I believe we have Atifa who will be presenting today. So I have enabled screen sharing. The time and screen is yours. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Atifa, and today's topic is privately owned cultural heritage in cities. So first, let me review back to the background. So the issue is about privately owned cultural building, which was once the former colonial regent's residence located on Veteran Street, Serang District, that is now better known as the Birdhouse due to its current function, and the building is in poor condition. and the best practice for the privately owned cultural heritage is in Netherlands. The Netherlands has one of the most complete and multifaceted systems for financing private heritage preservation in Europe, consisting of tax incentives, grants, loans, and publicly funded non-governmental organizations, primarily based on the national level. For the designated monuments can deduct some property expenses such as repairs, maintenance, and replacement costs from their income taxes. The total amount of the deduction is variable depending on whether or not the monument is the owner's primary residence. If it's the owner's primary residence, then in addition to the full deduction for project cost, minus any subsidy amount, depreciation, and fixed owner charges such as taxes and insurance may also be deducted. And the monuments that are open to the public are exempted from wealth tax, and when monuments are given as gifts or bequests to certified social and cultural organizations, they do not incur inheritance or gift taxes. Or known as RDMZ, provision costs a pool of 48,000 eligible listed properties, and projects on houses can receive grants for as much as 50% of their cost. And the next one is the subsidized its own and historic provides to their inspection services and receive regular maintenance visits and reports by the Monument Watch employees. And half of the cost of the entire project is provided the government on the national and provincial level. So here I made some suggested solution for the privately owned cultural heritage building. The first one is the provision of financial assistance by the government to owners of cultural conservation buildings by providing incentives to cultural heritage owners. So the government or regional government may provide land and building tax deductions or income tax to the cultural conservation owner who has protected the cultural conservation that is in accordance with the provisions of laws and regulations. With this land and building tax relief, the owner of the cultural conservation does not feel burdened by the building he owns, and most importantly, a building is are the cultural heritage buildings that are prohibited from being demolished or changed. The Class B is a cultural heritage building that can be restored using restoration techniques. The Class C are buildings that can be changed while maintaining the appearance of the main building. And Class D are buildings that can be dismantled and rebuilt as before because the conditions endanger the occupants and the surrounding environment. So the largest tax incentives can go to the highest cultural heritage building category because maintenance costs are higher for a Class A cultural heritage building that prohibits any changes to the shape of the building. The second one is the compensation for cultural heritage owners. So private companies can also participate in cultural heritage preservation responsibility program by giving awards to community token of appreciation, and the award given to owners or managers of cultural heritage buildings is intended to increase public appreciation for actively participating in efforts to protect and preserve the cultural heritage. And the last one is by maintenance. So the maintenance can be in the form of cleaning the cultural heritage building and repairing the cultural heritage buildings. Non-profit organizations will raise funds to be used to maintain the cultural heritage structure. The funds may be raised through activities organized by these non-profit organizations, and the government should also budget to be used for cultural heritage building maintenance. The second solution is the community empowerment by the implementation of cultural upgrading plays an important standing and mindset in the cultural heritage area, and there are several forms of upgrading that can be carried out annually, including upgrading of cadres to preserve cultural heritage objects and stakeholders in the preservation of cultural heritage objects. But the availability of funds in comparison to the number of participants may be an impediment to carrying out this training, so this upgrading activity must be carried out in stages. Of counseling related to cultural conservation preservation, aside of institutions and the community in the preservation of cultural heritage objects. The goal of this counseling is not only to increase knowledge, but also to inspire community members and government officials to prioritize the preservation of cultural heritage objects. The Education, Culture, Youth, and Sports Department, as well as the Cultural Conservation Preservation Center, can counseling. So as a result, counseling will have an impact on efforts to preserve cultural heritage by opening up new perspectives and mindsets for both the government officials and local communities. Vision is to increase public awareness and cultural heritage owners' commitment through empowerment. In culture
Okay, apparently she's been having connection problems since the beginning of her presentation. However, if you look at the link that I shared with you, which discusses a recent case of there she is again. Good.
Yeah, sorry for the trouble.
That's okay. Welcome back.
So the second mission is increase public awareness and participation in cultural conservation by extension activities to increase public understanding of cultural heritage building maintenance and cleaning up cultural heritage through community service activities. And the last one is collaboration with non-governmental organizations involved in cultural preservation by cultural heritage maintenance and restoration activities, and also the cultural heritage documentation and publication activities. So the first program for the action plan is increase financial support for efforts to preserve privately owned cultural heritage. The goal is to reduce the burden on owners of cultural heritage buildings in order to make it easier for them to maintain and preserve their buildings. That should be done on the second year up to the 10th year, and the stakeholders are the Department of Revenue and Management of Cultural and Private Sector. Increase awareness and public awareness and understanding of the significance of cultural heritage preservation that should be done on the first year until the stakeholders of the local community, Department of Culture, and then education authorities. And last program is collaboration with non-governmental organizations involved in cultural preservation. The goal is to restore the condition of cultural heritage buildings cultural heritage information to the general public. That should be done here, and the stakeholders are non-governmental organizations, Department of Culture and Tourism, and Preservation Center. And that's it for today's presentation.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And well, I think the case of cultural heritage and its maintenance is a classic case of if we're talking about new development, then it's usually has something to do with NIMBYism, or not in my backyard. But however, when we talk about cultural built heritage or cultural heritage, the case is of its maintenance and its significance, and perhaps even its contribution to the local community. For example, the case that I just shared with you in the through the chat box. It's about the wall of the former Kartasura fort, or Kartasura Benteng fort. Okay. It's an old wall. What the fort was, I think, if my memory serves me correctly, I think the fort was the fort or the palace, actually, because it was part of the Kartasura Kraton, so palace, which was a relic from the Mataram Kesultanan Mataram, I think, between 1680 to 1745. So it's from the 17th, from the late 17th and mid 18th century. And the problem is that the local community is dismantling. What is left of the wall to make way for private development, for boarding house, I think it was. See, the problem is that when you have cultural heritage, like in Atifa's case is the birdhouse, or the former colonial regents residence. And I can think of several other cultural heritage or cultural built heritage that, if we look at it from an economical point of view, it doesn't contribute much to the community. I'm not going to talk about how it contributes to the city as a whole, but at least a direct contribution to the local community that interacts with the cultural heritage on a day-to-day basis. It's always that argument. Society, the community, are very practical creatures. So it's not contributing to anything. It's just an old wall. It's just an old building. So let's demolish it. Let's convert it into something else, something worthwhile, something that can contribute to to our community economically, and something that can contribute to the development and the further advancement of our community. On the other hand, the historic society, the government, and other relevant organizations might might want to maintain that for obviously for historical or cultural, for its cultural historical significance. So not necessarily for its economic contribution or anything. And that's where the usual source of conflict arises. I noticed in the strategy and in the action plan that was presented briefly. It has Atifa presented a strategy of tax incentives, a progressive tax incentive, as a matter of fact, depending on the different levels or different categories of the cultural heritage itself. So the largest tax incentive or the largest tax cut would be for those who own A-grade cultural heritage structures, and then it progressively gets the tax incentive progressively gets smaller as the categories decline. Other efforts, such as organizing awards to those who maintain the historic structures the best they can, as best they can also be organized to increase the community's awareness, to increase public awareness, to increase the public interest in cultural built heritage, perhaps. And we can the city government, not us, sorry, the city government can co-arrange and co-organize such events, such awards with relevant private party resources or private organizations or non-profit organizations. And so one thing that we have to keep in mind is that on the one hand, we are allowed to own, manage, and operate cultural built heritage sites and structures. But on the other hand, the government does not provide additional incentives for us to help maintain and cover the operational costs of the historic structure. And for obvious reasons, I guess the government's resources are limited, but we can still, I think, leverage other forms of funds or resources to help historic structure owners maintain and cover their operational costs, their routine operational costs, because I don't know. I think the older the building, the more maintenance it requires. You fix one thing, another thing breaks. I think that's very typical of old structures, or not only old structures, but also old items, old things, old vehicles. If any of you happen to like to tinker with old vehicles, then you know how it is. You fix one thing, another thing breaks, and so on and so forth. So it's a continuous struggle to maintain these structures. It's an endless effort to maintain these structures, so that to make sure that they are operational. And not to mention, if we have to update its utilities to conform with new standards, new safety standards, new construction, or new structural standards, then that's a lot of work, because those things, because these structures were built according to safety and building standards in their era, and that could be standards that were up to date 100, 200 years ago, and therefore they need to be updated. Accordingly. Before we move on, I'd like to give the opportunity to the class to give a feedback or a comment on the case, or perhaps even discuss the case that I just shared with you. Yeah, you're more than welcome to raise your hand and or directly unmute yourselves. If not, then I thank Atifa for sharing your ideas with us this afternoon, and we will move on to our next presenter, whose theme covers whose theme is under the same umbrella term of conservation and revitalization. So, William, the time is yours.
Could you see my screen, sir?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. So good afternoon, Pak Prananda and friends. My name is William Harahap, student number 8, and today I will talk about the revitalization of Pasar Lama Tangerang. So today's presentation is divided to 4 sections. The first section is the introduction. I will briefly remind you about my last presentations about the study case of Pasar Lama Tangerang, and it will be continued by the identification of issue. I will talk about the surrounding issue of Pasar Lama Tangerang, and followed by the best practices that I found and also the plausible solutions. So the first one is the introduction. I've mentioned that Pasar Lama Tangerang is a city icon that is one of the economic pulses of Tangerang city, and its origins cannot be separated from the existence of the Chinese community in Tangerang, which is known as the Cina Benteng, and its story can also be traced from the voyage of Admiral Cheng Ho, who later acculturated with the Muslim community. So Pasar Lama Tangerang, not just a market, it's also one of the ethnic enclaves in Kota Tangerang, in Tangerang City. So here are the brief overview. The location is located in Tangerang District, Tangerang City, Banten Province, and also near Tangerang KRL Station along Jalan Kisamun. And from the cultural perspective, despite being in Tangerang where the majority of the people are Muslims, the Tangerang Old Market area itself was Chinatown, which became the forerunner of Tangerang City. And from the economic side, the area has a high economic potential because it is very lively, both day and night, and mostly dominated by street vendors. Here are the maps of the Pasar Lama Tangerang. Pasar Lama Tangerang is distributed in Jalan Kisamun and market area along those corridor. And from the last presentations, I've told you there are 2 main problems in Pasar Lama Tangerang. The first one is the visual, because the area look shabby, dirty, and messy. This causes by the lack of management and the lack of facilities and infrastructures. And the second main problem is the existence of extortion. And those problems have a future implications that the appearance of an unattractive market will reduce the number of visitors, the extortion will hinder development, and will also reduce the public trust in the government. And those, it will make the vitality of Pasar Lama will decrease. And for the best practices, I chose our neighboring countries, Chinatown, Singapore, because it's similar characteristic of ethnic enclaves. So brief history, in the 1822 Master Town Plan, Sir Stamford Raffles allocated the whole area west of the Singapore River for a Chinese settlement known as the Chinese Kampong. So envisaging the Chinese would form the bulk of future Tondellers, Singapore, the new land of opportunity, then had attracted many Chinese immigrants who expanded the original boundaries of this economically and culturally vibrant self-contained town. This self-contained kampong or community settlement became home to many Chinese immigrants and a transit point for coolies or unskilled laborers going to Malaya. And due to the overcrowding and congestion, major upgrading of shop houses and new developments took place at the end of 1983, and the street hawkers were housed in Kereta Air complex. Contrary to its name, Chinatown is not exclusively Chinese. It also has small communities of Indian traders around the junction of South Bridge Road and Upper Cross Street, and also Indian temples and Muslim mosques can be found in the area. While I chose Singapore Chinatown due to its similar characteristic of ethnic enclaves, I chose Jalan Braga Bandung for one of the best practices because the same characteristic of its urban element, that is a corridor. So Jalan Braga Bandung is one of the historical evidence that is currently still standing strong and with various kind of stories presented in it. This main street of the city of Bandung has existed since the days of Dutch East Indies government. And this street is also the center of Bandung young people to spend their weekend nights. And Jalan Braga was the center of fashions back there. There are many European-style clothing shops standing on the street. And also in the past, Jalan Braga was known as the Miss Europees Winkelstraat van Indie, or the most prominent European shopping complex in the Dutch East Indies. I believe the term Paris van Java also rises because these streets. And for the plausible solutions, the first possible solution is for the visual improvement. The first thing is to revitalize the buildings, because Pasar Lama Tangerang has old and cultural heritage buildings, and it is important to revitalize old and heritage buildings in Pasar Lama Tangerang without turning it into a theme park out of the Chinatown's cultural and historical area. And for the infrastructure, we also must improve the infrastructure. Because although located near train station, its connectivity to Pasar Lama Tangerang has not been optimized. And by adding necessary infrastructure and facilities such as sidewalks and pedestrian crossing, it will make it more comfortable for visitors, especially pedestrians. And lastly, street vendors management, because the existence of or the presence of street vendors is one of the contributing factors of Pasar Lama visual look that looks shabby, dirty, and messy. And managing the existing street vendors will make Pasar Lama Tangerang area become neat and orderly. The second possible solution is to increase the control and supervisions. The first one is conduct maintenance. So maintenance is important in keeping the good shape of Pasar Lama Tangerang. It also will show the problems and needs for repair so that further actions can be taken. The second one is the law enforcement. So the improvement of supervision and law enforcement are needed to deal with the extortion case, and appropriate punishment will provide a deterrent effect for the perpetrators. And lastly, the easier and more transparent administration. It will reduce the number of extortion and increase public, like the local communities and businesses trust in Pasar Lama Tangerang. Clear administrative procedures will also help. The third and last possible solution is the local empowerment. This divided to financial support and also educational support. So the financial support can be in the form of providing incentives or compensation that can boost local and small businesses in Pasar Lama Tangerang, while educational support can be done by doing counselings or public forums that can help in educating small and local businesses. It also can be one of the input in the further development of Pasar Lama Tangerang. So from this plausible solution, this is my strategic plan. So the vision is have a community-driven revitalization of Pasar Lama Tangerang. The first program is to enhancing the visual aesthetic of Pasar Lama Tangerang by revitalize the old and heritage building, improve the facilities and infrastructure, and also the management of street vendors. The second program is to improving the control and supervision of Pasar Lama Tangerang by carry out maintenance, enforce the law on the of extortion, and easier and more transparent administration. And the third program is the empowerment of local businesses in Pasar Lama Tangerang by providing incentive or compensations, and also conduct counselings and public forums to local and small businesses. So here is my action plan. I found three major stakeholders from this case. The first one is the government of Kota Tangerang. The second one is from the local community, that is Komunitas UMKM Pasar Lama Kota Tangerang. And lastly, the management of Pasar Lama Tangerang, that is PT Tangerang Nusantara Global. And so the first program has the goal to improve the beauty of the old market in order to increase visitors. It will be done in the first 5 years, and the stakeholders are the Department of Public Works and Spatial Planning, Market Management, Department of Culture and Tourism, and also private sector, because I think the revitalization needs a lot of money that can be helped by private sectors. And also the second program has the goal to maintain the visual condition of Pasar Lama Tangerang and reducing the act of extortion. The stakeholders are the market management, local communities, law enforcer, and the city government. Lastly, the third program has the goal to provide financial and educational support for small medium enterprises in Pasar Lama Tangerang. It will be done in the first 5 years, and the stakeholders are the Department of Industry and Trade, private sectors, NGOs, local communities, and businesses. I think that's it for my presentations. If you have any questions, you can ask. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Can we go back to the action plan slide? Thank you. I was just wondering, are there any plans to introduce new activities to Pasar Lama Tangerang and the surrounding areas to diversify the activities, plus also to perhaps enhance or support the current business activities that take place in Pasar Lama Tangerang.
For the new activities, I haven't decided it because I chose this program to tackle two of those main problems. But the strength of the Pasar Lama Tangerang is those culinary tourism, sir. And I think one of the new plan could be making an event, maybe, sir, to boost the tourism on Pasar Lama Tangerang, sir.
Okay, well, that could work because apparently it has worked to some extent for Jalan Tunjungan, if I'm not mistaken. They do have regular events along the streets. So I feel that this is a bit kitschy, but it works nonetheless. But it plays on the song Rek Ayo Rek Mlaku Neng Tunjungan. So let's actually go for a walk along Tunjungan, and so that's what they did. They brought that verse of the song to life, and I guess it caught on to the local communities and to the greater Surabaya community, thus creating. I think the event was. I think it started out as Pasar Malam Tunjungan, and then it continued to evolve to some extent to include other events or other attractions, such as live performances and of course street vendors and whatnot. So I do believe that revitalization, although in the enhancement of visual aesthetics and the improvement of control and supervision, especially when extortion is involved, is very, very crucial. But I think it is also important to consider the introduction of, like you said, events and or other supporting activities that could enhance the local tourist attractions and therefore indirectly benefiting the small and medium enterprises that operate in Pasar Lama Tangerang. Good. Or perhaps anyone else have any comments, or perhaps have seen or experienced a similar area where it has been revitalized. I know Singapore is doing a lot of these revitalization projects almost consistently and constantly, I think, due to the fact that they don't have a lot of land to build on. And so old sites tend to get replaced, or if the cultural significance outweighs the economic benefits, then they would revitalize the area, revitalize the area, and repackage it into something, repackage it and reintroduce it as something new. So it's not a new thing, but it's a newly reintroduced area, breathing a new life to an otherwise derelict. Although I've never really seen a derelict area in Singapore. I don't know. I haven't spent that long time there. As far as my observation goes, I haven't seen any derelict areas there. So perhaps it's because they continue to reformulate, reorganize, and reintroduce old areas as something new. Yeah, but I think the program goals and the stakeholders involved are spot on. In the case of Pasar Lama Tangerang, forget it. Sorry, but the goals are spot on. So one last opportunity for those who'd like to contribute to our discussion, or perhaps deliver their comments with regards to the revitalization theme. Otherwise, you can end your presentation right now. How many of us are there? Oh, there are 8. Okay, great.
If there are any other questions, I think we can end the presentations. Thank you for the attentions and also the feedback and input, Pak Prananda. And thank you.
No worries. Thank you very much for sharing your theme, your case study, and your proposed solutions with us. For those of you who perhaps joined in late, here's the QR code once again. And I noticed that the QR code has been a bit finicky these last few weeks, but nevertheless, give it a try and just let me know if you have issues in scanning the QR code, and I will mark your attendance manually. So once again, we are at week 13. We are currently at week 13, and we still have. Hang on, where is it? And we have. How many themes do we have? We've done urban heritage management, revitalization. We still have conflict management, sustainable urban management, smart city, disaster management, and urbanization. So, so how many topics is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. I know that our final draft or the peer review workshop or the final draft review is slated for week 15, which means that we have 5 themes to explore over the next week, which is less than ideal. So what I propose is perhaps I can shift. I know this is going to bleed out of the projected or the scheduled 16-week course or 16-week semester. So I propose we add another week. So the peer review workshop is shifted to week 16. That way we can discuss these. We can discuss the next 5 themes next week and the week after. Well, hang on. If we do this next week, if we discuss, say, conflict management and sustainable urban management next week, and then on week 15 it's smart city, disaster management, and urbanization, and then the peer review workshop, we can do that in week 16, and so right after and so the final submission, the final draft submission after the peer review workshop will be done outside of the class. So we have full active. So rather than having the final submission on week 16, we will have the peer review workshop on week 16, and then you will submit the final draft. During the evaluation week. So because we normally have our evaluation week or the evaluation period. Masa koreksi, we would have that a couple of weeks, or maybe 2 or 3 weeks after the final week of the semester. So you still have time to submit your final final essay. Yeah, I think we'll do that. So we don't have to. I don't think we have to add another session after that. After the peer review workshop. So I'll revise the peer review workshop timeline accordingly. And some of you may have noticed. That I have marked your first draft submission. And all I can say is that I'm pleased with your submissions. There are a couple of submissions that didn't really follow the template. Most of you did, so congratulations on that. Great job on that. Maybe 1 or 2 didn't really follow the template. My suggestion is please adhere to the template that I have shared with you. You can access the template in I think the semester apparat, and perhaps even in the access section our classroom as well. So please have a look at the feedback that I've given you in your first draft submission, and then that should give you pointers as to what you need to address for the following drafts. But all in all, let me once again emphasize that you have all done a great job so far, and I'm really happy and proud of your of the results that you have achieved so far. Okay, I think that's all from me today. Once again, we've discussed a little bit about the issues in urban heritage management, and we have seen and heard a presentation on how to address the issues with urban heritage management. The progressive tax incentive, I think, is pretty innovative. And then we've also had a brief presentation on revitalization and how to a revitalization of Pasar Lama Tangerang, and the strategies and the steps to take to overcome the inherent issues of the area. Thank you very much to our two presenters today. Despite the technical glitches that we had earlier on, I think that was, but I think that did not really impact negatively on the overall presentation. I look forward to seeing you all again next week when we talk about conflict management and sustainable urbanism, or sustainable urban management. Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for attending today's session, and take good care of yourselves, and I hope to see you again next week. Have a great afternoon. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.